Some of the economic changes we saw in the High Middle Ages from the 10th century on were really part of a larger change, and one of the most important changes in the European economy, and that's the commercial revolution. What the commercial revolution is essentially the movement from an economy focused on agriculture to an economy focused on trade. And this took a really long time in Europe, from about 1000 AD all the way to 1750 with the start of the Industrial Revolution. But it has its roots here in medieval Europe. A lot of these causes are interconnected. If you think about the Crusades, remember, traditionally soldiers in Europe had been paid with land, with fiefs. Well, that became harder to come by, so increasingly people need money to pay their soldiers. After the Crusades, you also saw the opening up of trade to the east. So there's an influx of luxury goods. And if you want to trade luxury goods, you need gold. You need, currencies you can trade in as opposed to land. And you also saw the growth of and the need for banking. Merchants who were importing goods from far away needed a way to quickly get cash and credit. And all these changes really contributed to a fundamental change in the way that the European economy functioned. There were a few kind of main effects to note here. One is, as we said, the growth of banking. The first real banks started in Europe, started in the High Middle Ages. Earlier, it was pretty uncommon for people to borrow money because A, didn't really need it very much, and B, it was sort of considered sinful to charge interest on loans. But with the need for more money, some of those rules were relaxed. You also saw the growth of guilds, which we previously discussed, and along with that, the growth of towns. As trade increased, the need to regulate that trade became more important. With that was the increase of the merchant class. Since trade in the early Middle Ages really didn't happen very much, there wasn't much of a class of merchants because there's no real need for them to exist. But as trade increases, you have this more important burgher merchant class in growing medieval towns. And then you also have the increased power of kings. We tend to think of kings as being all-powerful. That really didn't start in the early Middle Ages. We start to see kings consolidate their power because they're the ones who can tax towns, and they start to try and regulate trade within their kingdoms. And having a more powerful tax base of merchants became important to the growth of the power of kings. And these changes are going to be important not only in the Middle Ages, but they're going to lead directly to some of the social changes we see in the Renaissance, and then eventually all the way up to the Industrial Revolution.